Hello, and thank you so much for watching the Bakkhai, or I'm trying so hard to be good. I would normally say, I hope you enjoyed the show, but I'm sure that you did. My name is Zach Apony. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the production dramaturg for all of the Bakkhai variations, including this one.
I am Alix Rosenfeld, she, her pronouns, and I wrote the Bakkhai, or I'm trying so hard to be good.
And I'm Tai Verley. I am the director of the Bakkhai, or I'm trying so hard to be good, and I use she, her pronouns.
Fabulous. So we're just going to have a little conversation, a little hangout to give you some more context and insight into the play. So thanks for hanging out. This first question's going to start with you, Alix, because you were first commissioned by Villanova Theatre to write a play inspired specifically by Anne Carson's version of Bakkhai, but also Bakkhai in general. What about this text drew you to what you ended up writing?
A lot. I do think that my play is maybe a loose interpretation, shall we say, of the text. But there's actually a prologue. It's something that Anne Carson wrote in her prologue that I'm going to pull up because I think it's actually really helpful. So she writes, "Look at those poor, passionate women who worship this god, the Bakkhai. They had a prior existence once. The herdsman describes them lying at peace in the mountains, calm as buttons on a shirt. This is the world before men. Then the posse arrives and violence begins. What does this tell us? The shock of the new will prepare its own unveiling in old and brutal ways." So I brought that up because I do think that at the heart of this play, something that I feel deeply is, or I guess a question I have is, what kind of friendship, what kind of relationship, what kind of working dynamic could these women have had if they hadn't created the world that they had? Because Dee is so put upon because of this system, and Alana has benefited but is also fought against, but is also upholding this system in really awful ways. So that's a big overarching theme of the play. And then so much about Dionysus in the original, about being an outsider, is really key here. And yeah, I mean, there's so much I could go on, but those are some of the big themes that I really latched onto.
Yeah, that Anne Carson, she has a way with words, huh?
What a broad.
Yeah, right. So, and also part of the commissioning was clear that you were writing for something that could be or probably would be performed on a digital platform like Zoom. How does that feel different from writing something that'll be performed, live on a stage?
The logistics are so hard. I think one of the bigger things that I had to tackle was, how do you maintain tension in a space, in a room? Because in a play, when you have physical proximity, there's that notion of, oh, this person can't just disappear from the room. Even if they're upset, if they're angry, if they want to leave, they still have to walk steps to get to a door and leave. And the other person has to convince them to stay if they need them to stay. And in a Zoom room, all you have to do is hit leave, click a little button. And so the challenge there was creating some of the same dynamics, but with very different rules. And I would say that was in general what it was like writing for Zoom. There were things that I thought would hold true, and then once we were in the rehearsal room, that just wasn't the case. But it was kind of fun for that reason, right? Of trying to create the same tension and the same heightened sense of existence, even if the circumstances are not the same.
Do you want to hop onto that, Tai, and give any
Yeah, I
insights into
do.
directing the Zoom?
Directing over Zoom also extremely interesting and different than the theater one-on-one experience. You have to treat it a bit more like a film, and hoping that the sound and the light and the actor can convey in the minutest of gestures something that is quite large for the whole entirety of the play. And even as I speak, I'm looking at my gestures and how I want to move, and yet in the Zoom room, that can be huge, or it can be it's very small, every single thing that I'm doing. And so noticing that in the actors, as well as any of the other lights and sounds, the minutia of it is very important. And I learned a whole lot from making sure that Zoom in itself told Alix's story in the best way that we could. And it, hopefully you thought so.
Well, I certainly thought so. To kind of get down to the specifics of Alix's story after reading in this play, and I think you were also kind of involved in the early stages of the writing of this play. What got you excited to work on it and direct it?
Well, yes, Alix did ask me to do a bit of dramaturgical work on the piece prior to it, I guess, getting to Villanova as a final draft. I feel like in my personal experience as an artistic director of my own company, I have lived the D experience. I know what it is to be given something after a cis white male, and it felt very personal to me to make sure that all sides could be seen and heard. There's a lot of weight on any BIPOC person that takes over a role in a predominantly white institution. And I feel like I I can speak to that experience very personally, which we should get drinks over one time, but also knowing that Alix was writing from a perspective that is her own and from another person's perspective, and wanting to make sure that, yeah, all sides were being seen. And I feel like she did.
Thank you. So Alix, this play is obviously incredibly relevant. These sorts of stories are coming up all over the place that we're having in the theatrical world and just the world in general. Can you share some of the specific stories and context that were in your mind when you were writing this play that kind of clashed with Bakkhai to bring you to this piece?
Sure. I mean, we're in a particular moment in American theater where a lot of BIPOC artists are speaking truth to power about their experiences with white artists, especially powerful white artists. And so what inspired this piece was there were several confessionals that came out over the summer, specifically about white women in theater imposing and mistreating BIPOC artists that they were working with. And so this just was hanging on me. And of course, I am a white Jewish woman in this institution. And so I've been thinking a lot about where I play into that, and what are the systems I'm upholding? What are the ways that I have caused harm, even unintentionally? And so I don't think I have answers, but I certainly wanted to pose the questions and look at them in the play. And yeah, I mean, so specifically Griffin Matthews with Diane Paulus was a big inspiration. Rachel Chafkin even had her own moment. And then of course here in Philly, we are experiencing our own sort of moment, and with Playpen and other institutions just having a reckoning. And so it's been on my mind. It's as much as it's been on anybody's mind, really, that works in theater. The We See You White American Theater document is so crucial and so pivotal in this moment. And this was my way of considering that document and the other instances of harm. I don't have a better word for that, but that's really just what I wanted to explore and think about.
Just deep nods from me, just really deep nods.
Absolutely. And I think kind of transitioning into that, thinking about, yourself and your own experiences and how they intersect with this, there's inside of that been a lot of conversation about the right to tell someone else's story, a story that is not your personal experience. And so I'm curious how you, as a white playwright, navigated writing this play that has a Black woman lead who faces those sorts of intersecting struggles. So I'm curious, what was that experience like for you, and how did you navigate that?
I mean, I really did consider deeply up and down, left and right about whether I had the right to tell this story. And at the end of the day, there's really nothing that absolves me or gives me permission. And I know that, right? There's just, at the end of the day, I did have to give myself permission to at least consider it and try it. But that said, when I gave myself that permission, I also had to acknowledge that I am not all knowing, which I think everybody should do. I think we should all extend ourselves the grace of just not knowing everything. It's impossible. And so what do you do if you don't know everything? Because you don't. You seek answers, you do research, or you go to experts. And so for me, I was like, well, who do I know in this community who I know is very good with new play development, who does a lot of new play development study and work. Someone who's an artist who I trust, who I knew was going to tell me how it is, because I just didn't want to be mollycoddled. I wanted honesty, and I wanted someone to move this play forward and to provide it the expertise that it needed, and that it was just going to be lacking in without it. And so that's why I approached Tai. Tai really fit the bill there. And the thing I think what's important to note is she did do this out of the kindness of her heart. I also paid her, because we should be paying artists, especially BIPOC artists, for their expertise, particularly with this play, which can be very triggering and can bring up a lot of uncomfortable feelings and a lot of hurt. So I wanted to make sure that Tai felt as supported as she could be in this moment. Did I do it perfectly? I still actually wonder about that, because Tai, I don't actually recall whether or not I even gave you an inkling as to what the play was about when I approached you.
I don't know. I'd have to check the emails.
And looking back, like I think about that, I'm like, well, just in the same way that, trigger warnings can be helpful because it allows someone to make their own decisions about the journey they might embark on or not embark on if it's not that moment for them or it's not a good time for them. I think if I had done this again, I would have made sure to do that as well. Not just be like, I'll give you money for your labor, which you absolutely deserve. So that was a very long-winded way of just saying that if you're ever going to study or write about something that's not coming from your own experience, you can do that. You just have to do the work. And, as a dramaturg, something I like to say is that if you approach something with respect and with genuine curiosity, you can do just about anything, but respect is actually a lot harder to accomplish than you think. And so you really have to go further, like go to the length that you think is respectful, and then go further and then do more.
Yeah, the intersectionality of this play too makes it really a deep dive into all the, not just power struggles, but racial struggles and gender struggles. There's so much going on that and asking the question of what would you do if you were in this person's shoes as a human just feels very much like what's going on in the play. So I appreciated Alix asking me, but also realizing that if someone were in my shoes every day and watching the things that are happening in the world, how would you respond given all of the circumstances that lead us to be who we are? And that's a lot of what the play is about, is all the past. It's all the past that's now leading us to be here. And we only have to deal with what's here and what's present, but you can't forget that I am Black and this other person is white. Mm-hmm. That just is what it is as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Tai. Thank you both. This is my last question, and it's a simple question, but it can be very difficult to answer, which is, what do you hope audiences will get from this show?
That is a doozy. I would love audiences to deeply consider what are the systems that you uphold and why? And what do you benefit from upholding that system? Or what kind of benefits do you get from upholding that system, rather?
I have an answer. I swear I have an answer, Zach.
It's going to be brilliant.
Because I feel like I ask this of myself every time we look at the play or look at a scene, or now look at the whole of it. And I feel like I want audiences to ask each other the hard questions.
Mm.
They will not like the answers most of the time. Those are hard conversations to have, but they're worth it. I just want people to keep asking questions of themselves and of society and their family members and friends. Just keep asking questions, because those conversations will lead to only the betterment of society, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Big agree. Yeah, stay curious. Just stay curious. And especially, I would say, white people who are watching this, lead those questions. Really get after them, and keep doing the work. It's so worth it, as Tai said.
Yeah, I absolutely couldn't agree more. As a dramaturg, but also just as a person, I love leading with questions, and hard ones. I hope these ones that I posed to you two weren't so hard, though. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you so much for providing all these lovely insights to the folks who just watched this show. And thank you for sticking around all this time. And hopefully I'll see you at the end of some of the other variations. Thanks so much.